Hello lovely people and welcome back to my channel. If you don't know me already, I'm Fran and I'm all about giving you those tips, tricks and training to start tightening those pockets and start saving savvy. As you can tell from the title, today's video is going to be all about budgeting. I'm going to be taking you through how I budget as a graduate, what you need to do if you've never budgeted before and you've got no idea what's going on with your money, and then some of my top tips to start being a little bit more savvy with your money so that you can start saving those pennies and watch them build into the pounds. If you're new here, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. And you can also hit the bell icon to be notified the next time I post a video. Okay, let's get straight into today's video. So I absolutely love speaking about personal finances, budgeting and saving money where you can. I think there's so much power in having a tight relationship with your money, because then you have the power to know what you can spend, what you can, and no one can say anything to you about it. At the end of the day, it's your money and you should really have a tight grip on where it's going and what you're doing with it. Now, I know some people that are watching this will literally have never budgeted in their life. There's going to be those people that are literally scared to look at their bank account. They never check their online statements just because they think that they would rather not know. And whilst that is sometimes fun to not know how much you spent after a night out, or forget about that £100 that you spent on a new coat, that's really not the best way to start working towards a lifestyle that you want and using your money in a smart way. I'm quite lucky, as I've always been quite switched on with my money. I remember when I was about 14, I used to work at my dad's shop and get about 20-25 quid for a few hours work. And I remember I used to have this book and I used to write down all of my family's upcoming birthdays, and then I'd plan how much I was going to get every week from this job with my dad. And I literally did have different jars where I put my money. £2.50 is going into this jar because it's Mother's Day and I need to have £10 to spend on a present and a card for my mum. And I've always been like very clear with what I'm saving and why, and I think that's really important, and it's something that I've really tried to carry through. I'm obviously now getting way more than £20 a week, but I've also got way more that I have to spend my money on. So I try to keep that clarity, and it's actually really helpful and allows me to do what I want. So as a student straight out of university, I have got a truckload of debt, and I know that all my friends and people that have been a graduate are in the exact same position as me. I'm living in a really expensive city. I live in London, and I know the story is the same for loads of others as well as myself, that you find yourself living paycheck to paycheck. And I know when you're a student, the starting grad salary in a big city of 30 to 35k really sounds like a lot of money. But when you work it out and you realise that you're living in literally one of the most expensive cities in the UK, you actually don't have that much to play with. And I think that's why budgeting is such an important tool for me, as it means that although I am kind of still living paycheck to paycheck, I'm making sure that I'm spending, saving and investing my money in a way that is conducive towards my success and future goals, rather than just throwing it all down the drain and thinking, what am I even doing working 40 hours a week and I'm getting nowhere. Just a little side note here, this is not about being so obsessed with your money to the point that it causes you anxiety, or to the point where you feel like you can't say yes when a friend asks you to go out for dinner. It's really more about having the confidence and having the knowledge of your finances so that you can say yes without feeling guilty about it, and that you know you can afford those luxuries in life, but it's about being smart and planning rather than just splurging. This means when your parents or someone else asks you,
why are you spending £500 on a holiday? You can't afford that.
Why have you bought the bag? You can't afford that.
You can turn around and just say, yes, I can. It's your money. You need to know what you can and can't afford. And I think when you get to that stage of being comfortable enough with your money that other people's opinions don't matter, that is when you have the most freedom and you can really enjoy the little things and the luxuries in your life and just feel really fulfilled. So the first step towards really getting down and personal with your finances is really understanding how much money you've got coming in. Now, for a lot of us, that'll just be the one salary that we've got coming in from our normal jobs. However, for others, you might have little side hustles that you've got going on. You might get money from your parents if you're really lucky, or you might have some other funds that are coming in. This is probably the easiest part of the process. You know, it tends to be black and white, what is coming in and what isn't. But what I'm going to encourage you to do throughout this video is to get the numbers written down on paper. So if you sat there thinking, I've got 2.1k coming in a month, get that written down on a piece of paper under income. So the second step in the process is to then work out your expenses. And these expenses, I'm not talking about the meals out with your friends, I'm not talking about them clothes that you have to buy, I'm talking about the essentials. What are the essential expenses that you have to pay every single month? So for me, that's things such as my rent and my bills, any contracts that I'm tied into, such as my phone contract, insurance, gym membership, or any debt that I'm paying off. Your weekly food shop would also fit under the essentials budget, as obviously everyone needs to eat. So just to be clear, that does not include the monthly ASOS order, including the shoes that you just have to have. And it also doesn't include the weekly or even daily drinks after work that you feel like you need to have to relax. You just need to be honest with yourself here. What do you really, really need to pay and what do you not? So once you've calculated that all and really got a grasp of it, you need to write it down on that same piece of paper under expenses. So then step 3 is to think about your goals. What are your financial goals? Why did you click on this video? Is it so you can treat yourself without feeling guilty? Are you saving up for something special such as a car or a house? Do you just want to stop feeling like you're throwing money down the drain every single month? Or maybe you just want to have a better understanding of where you are so that you can plan for your future. One thing that I'd encourage here is that you think about your goals on the long term as well as the short term. So just an example of this is maybe you want to have more than £20 left in your account before the next payday drops. But on the longer term, you're thinking about saving 10 grand so that you can go traveling for the year. So with this, you just really need to be objective and specific with your goals. So write all of those things down that you're financially aiming towards on your piece of paper under the heading goals. So now that we've done that, we've got a really good handle on your income, your essential expenses and your goals. So now you need to take the two figures of your income and your essential expenses and work out the difference. And that middle gap is going to be what you've got to then put towards achieving your goals versus what you spend on your wants and needs. So using those example figures from before, we've got 2.1k as income, 1,500 as essential expenses, which leaves us with £600 to play with every single month. So it's only in the next step that we're able to look at that £600 and see how we're going to use it to achieve those goals. So that brings us on to step 4. This is the hardest part of the process and it's where you need to be really, really honest with yourself. There's no easy way to do this and I'd honestly just recommend looking at your online bank statement or your printed statement for the past 3 months and looking at all of your expenses. When we're doing this, we want to ignore any of the essential expenses that we'd identified in the previous step. And we just want to look at those added extras where you're spending £4 on a coffee, £30 on a shirt, and all those other little bits that just seem to be adding up over the month and ending up leaving you with that £20 before your next payday. So this may seem like an absolute mammoth task at the start and it really might seem quite daunting. If you're one of those people that would rather just not look at the bank account at all, I really advise against that. You need to get into the habit of being comfortable with what you're spending, otherwise you're constantly going to be uncomfortable with it and you're not going to achieve those goals that we just identified. You need to set up some time, sit down, put some music on to make yourself feel a little bit better about yourself and just do it. Now the problem that a lot of people are having is that all of those added extras are adding up to be equal to or even more than that £600 or whatever the figure is after you've paid your essential expenses. This is when we start to see people going into debt or just having no handle on the amount that they are spending. And we want to avoid that. We've got goals and we want to achieve them through having clear visibility of our finances. So the final thing that you need to do as part of step 4 is add up the total of what you've been spending on extras for each of the past 3 months. You need to add that together and divide by 3. That's going to give you an average figure of what you've been spending on all of these little fancy extras, and that's a really good ballpark figure that we can start using to cut down those expenses and start saving towards your goals. And now we're on to step 5. So you're sitting there, you're looking at the amount of money that you're spending on these added extras and you're thinking, yeah, well I needed that dress. Yeah, I needed to go out for a meal 3 times that week. I needed this, I needed that, I needed whatever. The honest answer is you actually probably didn't. If you can't do it yourself, maybe just sit down with a friend or a family member so that they can look at it objectively and see what you really need to spend your money on versus what you maybe don't. I think a large part of this is fueled by social media. Everyone's always taking a picture and flashing whatever they've just bought. And we all get sucked into this trap where we feel like we need to keep up with the latest trends. We feel like we have to go on holiday without really thinking about whether we can afford it. So again, in this step, I just really say say to be focused and assess whether what you're spending on these added extras is aligning with that, or is it actually quite damaging. I recently read a book and there was one line that really resonated with me, and I think it's really important for you to hear this in the context of saving and budgeting. And the line is, why is everyone buying things that they don't need with money that they don't have to impress people that don't care? And I'd like you to really think about that for a second. If that hits a chord with you as much as it did with me when I read it, you definitely need to start taking a look at what you're spending your money on and whether it really aligns with your goals. So now once you've took a look at those added extras and identified what you actually need to spend your money on to stay happy versus what is just a waste of your money, then we can really start making progress. What I'd recommend is that you categorize those added extras. So for example, if you really like spending time eating food out with your friends, don't stop doing that. Just set a monthly budget for it. Obviously the figures that I'm using are just examples and you need to work out what's affordable for you. But just as an example, let's say you work out from your added extras calculations that you have been spending over £200 a month on meals out. Maybe you want to cut that by half. So we'd say, I want to spend £100 a month on food, and you'd write that as your budget and you need to write that down on a piece of paper. Again, this is all objective, but anyway, you get the gist. You need to categorize what you're spending those little added extras on, and you need to make a goal of how much you realistically think that you can cut those down every single month. I'd recommend at first being quite realistic, setting yourself small goals, because honestly, if you're used to spending £600 a month on nothing, you're going to find it hard to cut that down drastically at the very start. So be very clear with what you want to do, but don't go too hard on yourself, because if you do go too hard and you don't achieve to your plan, then that's just going to be more damaging in the long run, because you're going to think that you can't stick to it. Honestly, saving even 50 quid every single month towards your goals is better than saving nothing. This is where it starts to get a little bit more exciting, as you can plan when you're going to hit those goals that we set. So if your goal was to save £1,000 for a holiday so that you can go away and enjoy yourself, you now know that with your £300 that you've got spare every single month, you can put that towards it, and it's going to take you just over 3 months to get there. Obviously, that principle can be applied to anything. You need to adjust the figures based on what you're earning versus what your expenses are. And it's also really important to take into consideration how long you want to give yourself to get to that financial goal. Obviously, if you've got a longer amount of time, you maybe want to reduce the amount that you're inputting every month, but it's totally up to you and your goals. So that's a bit of an overview on how to get a handle on your money and start looking in detail at what's coming in versus what's going out. Trust me when I say this is the first step to becoming financially free and really getting to enjoy the money that you've worked so hard to earn. A general rule of thumb is the 70-30 rule. So that tends to be that 70% of your money should be spent on your expenses every single month, and 30% of it is what you should have to play with. So obviously for some of us, especially those that are straight out of uni or on a potentially low graduate salary in an expensive city, that's going to be a little bit unrealistic. So you can maybe push it to the 90-10 rule, where you've got 90% of your income that's going towards expenses, and that 10% is what you've got to play with every month. But really, if your expenses aren't lining up to the 70-30 or the 90-10 rule, you really need to take another look at your finances and either start earning more money or start spending less. So just before I go on and give you some of my top tips to start being a little bit more savvy with your everyday spending, if you've liked this video so far, please do hit the like button below and hit subscribe, and it means you won't miss the next video. So my first tip is to look after your coins. I know a lot of us don't have many coins these days as we use cards for most purchases, but if you do have any coins, I'd really encourage you to save them. There's the well-known saying, if you look after the pennies, the pounds will look after themselves, and it really is true. Often you don't realise how much those little 10p's and 5p's will add up to in the long run. I know most cards and online banking these days do allow you to set round up, so you can set it to round up the change and it puts it into a separate account for you as like a little savings pot. Talking about change, one thing that is really important is that you try to change your attitude towards small change. A lot of people think 10p, 50p is just not really important, so they'd happily spend money on something if it's only a pound or two more, or they'd walk past a 50p if they saw it on the floor. I may sound really silly saying this, but I think doing that and ignoring small amounts of money builds like a negative mindset towards money, and it means that you're kind of subconsciously building building this attitude towards money where you don't value it. So if you're not valuing small amounts of change and small pieces of money, why would you start to value it when you get more? Building a mindset of conserving even small amounts of money is so important in setting that mindset for savings and to help you get towards your goals. One thing that I really like to do when I'm thinking about a big purchase is apply the 24-hour rule and the double it rule. So the 24-hour rule really just makes sure that you are giving yourself a little bit of time to think about those big purchases. So if you walk past something in a shop window, you want to buy it immediately, but you need to give yourself at least 24 hours just to make sure that that purchase is rational and that it actually really matters to you. A lot of times I've seen something and I've wanted it immediately, but after giving myself that 24 hours, I've realised that it would be a waste of my money and that I'd regret it. The second rule then is the double it rule. And I like to use the double it rule to make sure that I can really afford something that I'm trying to buy. So as a rule of thumb, if you can't buy it twice, it means you can't afford it. You don't want to spend so much money on something that once you've bought it, you've got less than that amount left in your bank. It just doesn't make financial sense. Think about it this way. If someone had only £10 in their bank account, would it be smart for them to go to Starbucks and spend £7 on a coffee and a cake? Definitely not. But what would be a more smart option is to spend less than half of what they've got left in their bank on buying their own bread, their sandwich filler and a drink. They could probably do that for around £2, thus leaving them way more than 50% left in their bank. And although that's again just an example, it's a way to start thinking about your purchases and making sure that you're not putting yourself out of pocket. My final top tip, especially for people that like to make their house look nice, is to not be scared of value packs. Like honestly, you can save so much money when you're buying the big ugly packs of mega value. They are honestly a great way to save money, and although they look kind of ugly, it's what's smartest for your bank account. So if you do feel a little bit weird about having these big ugly value packs on your side, you can always decant them into these pretty little containers, and that gives us a way to make sure our bank looks as aesthetically pleasing as our house does. And that's a wrap for today's video. I really hope that you found this video helpful and that it started to help you get a bit of a grasp on your budget and what your goals are financially. Let me know down below if I've missed any tips that you really like to use when you're budgeting, and drop a comment if you're ready to start this financial journey so that you can build towards a better future. I sound like a broken record, but please don't forget to like and subscribe. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you next week. Bye!